Welcome back, all. So now we're going to go ahead and examine the app component.html file and see what we have done there. Now, to begin with, the very first thing that you're going to immediately encounter is aside from your accounts, you will see this part here, this div, where it says you don't have any accounts yet, please add it, or please add them. Now, why do we have this line? This is basically this will be written out onto the screen if there are no accounts in existence. How do we check whether we have accounts in existence or not? Well, if the size of the array, if the length of the array, if the number of elements in the array is equal to 0, then the accounts array has no elements of whatsoever, and therefore we're using this if. So if the length of the array is equal to 0, meaning if it has no elements, well, then there are no accounts. So then it stands to reason that we should write, you do not have any accounts, please add them. Or add it, I don't really care. This particular variable here is a private one from private account. Yep, there we go. So private underline accounts. It's an array, and its elements are of type account from the model that we have created previously. So you have the first account and then you have the second account. The two of these are created in two different ways. This has been explained in previous tutorials. Now, one more thing to note. You can immediately see by this underline, by the naming convention, which I have mentioned before, that the private variables shall be named with an underline in front of the name of the variable or the name of the property. I can immediately look at the HTML template and immediately know that accounts is actually private by just looking at the naming convention of the underscore. Now, you might wonder yourselves, well, Ermin, this is never going to happen. You have initialized two accounts straight away, as you have explained before. Well, yes, but it's always a good practice to ensure yourselves. I mean, think of all the cases that can happen and create some sort of logic for each one of those cases so that you would have a failsafe. Yes, we have initialized two accounts, but you forget the fact that we can delete all the accounts. So if we delete all the accounts, and if there are no accounts in existence, this will be printed out onto the screen. Now, we would like these accounts to be printed, the contents of these accounts to be printed out onto the screen, to be displayed on the screen, should I say. So we're going to use the ng for loop from the previous tutorials, which we have seen. So we will have, I don't know, some arbitrary name for this. So it will be ACC as in accounts. And then every value of underscore accounts private property will be placed into the ACC, and through ACC we will access the individual properties. So that will be very easy to do like this. So ACC dot title will grab the title from this element. So title shall be grabbed, and therefore it will have the value of bank XY set. And then we would also like to have the ID as well printed out along with the account. So hey, ID. Let's grab the ID as well and print it out and have it displayed for us on the screen. Now, also we would like some sort of a description. So yes, please, we will take the description. Notice that the description has been placed in paragraph tags because it is a description after all. So balance shall be placed in paragraph tags as well, and we have placed strong here. Does anybody know what strong means in HTML like this? Well, it just means that whatever is printed out here in between the tags will be bold. There'll be bold letters. So acc.balance, that's how we're accessing that. And then down below, we have button, click, and on click, call method remove account. That was my phone in the background, if you didn't notice. But you have a button and says on click, call this method remove account, and pass the index, pass the index value of that account, which is basically the ID as what, which has the same value as the ID. And if we take a look at the app component.ts, you will see that we do indeed have a method remove account, which takes in a number, and then it says this dot accounts, and then it uses the splice, so it removes the current instance of that account depending on the index number that is passed. Now, if we go down further away from the for loop, so this is the for loop between these div tags. This will be the portion of the for loop. Now, if we go down a little bit further, we will see that we're doing something rather strange. So this, and this, these are two pretty much same codes for different input fields. Now, there you have a label, and then it says for equals title, and then title colon a closed label tag. And then input and ID is equal to title as well. So from the input, you know that you specify the type, and then you specify the name, and if you would like to give some value as well. And this part here is actually a reference to the HTML element input. But I will get to that. For now, I wish to explain why are we using this label and this for. Let me just go ahead and open up the site. And if I scroll down, you will see it says title here. Now this is in direct reference to title here. Let me just find it. There we go. So, oops. Let's go ahead and minimize this a little bit so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so you have this div, and this div is directly responsible for this part here, for this input field and the letters and the word title and colon. Now the reason why we have this for, and we're passing to this for the ID title, which and title is within the label. Well, that's because when we click on title, you see when we click, the cursor switches to that input field. If I click on description, the cursor switches to that input field. If I click on balance, the cursor switches to that input field. So we can also click on the fields in the fields themselves directly, but we can also click on the words next to the fields thanks to this label. So you just type in for equals, and you give the ID to the HTML element, and then you pass that ID to the label. Simple as that, no big deal. And then you can write something here. In our case, it's title colon. It's not necessary, but it's a very nice, convenient thing to have around. If I expand this, if I go down to the bottom, so the same logic applies here, the same logic applies here, and here you have a different logic. This is basically click to create an account. So this here is this entire div, or should I say this method, is entirely dependent on these references to HTML elements. Because if you remember from before, the create account actually takes on HTML elements as its parameters. So we're creating a reference to these HTML elements, to the input fields, and then we are passing those HTML element references to the create account function method. I keep confusing method and function. They are pretty much the same thing, just different naming conventions. And if I just find a create, okay, so it says private and then create account method here. It says title. This here that says any just means any HTML element. We were too lazy to specify specify which HTML element, so we've typed in any. It says title L, desk L, and bal L. So title, description, and balance, and we've basically stated that it's any HTML element and any HTML element, and again any, because we were too lazy to actually specify which ones do we actually want. Anyway, those three HTML elements are passed here, and I've explained this function in the previous tutorials when we were working on app.component.ts. But the general reasoning behind passing the HTML elements as opposed to their values, which you can see down below, it says title_l.value, is because we want to reset the fields. Upon input, we want to reset the fields balance shall be basically just 0, and these values, these two strings, shall be reset to nothing. They will be empty. So upon the creation of an account, reset all input fields and make them empty again, except balance, set that to 0 for some strange reason. That was the decision that was made. Anyway, it says this.accounts.push. Okay, so we would like to create a new account. All of this has been explained. If you didn't understand it to the best of your abilities, please go back a tutorial or post a question in the discussion section. Anyway, we're pulling the values from the HTML fields within the function parameters themselves. So it's title l.value, this l.value, and bal l.value. Anyway, we go back here. So on click, please create a new account with the input provided, and of course, the name within this button shall be create. Okay, so I'm gonna call the tutorial here, and then the follow-up we'll just see how this actually works and how this reacts based upon our clicking an input and what are some of the possible scenarios that are going to happen. Just 5 more minutes, and then we're going to move on to styles.